For those that I have not met yet, my name is Johnny Sabo. I was the deputy director for roughly 18 months for the Georgia Forestry Commission and behind Tim Loudermore. And I'm pretty sure Tim probably knew everybody in this room. Tim moved on to the Georgia Forestry Association, where I know he will continue to do good work and support the industry and support prescribed fire. And if you'd asked me 18 months ago or even 2 months ago if I'd have seen this coming, I'd have told you absolutely not. But I really am very humbled and honored to be here and to get to represent Georgia in this fashion. And I'll be around. So, after this, if you have any questions or anything you want to ask me or talk to me about the commission, please come up and ask me. I'm an open book. Oh, there we go. Maybe. And I'm not technology advanced. That is not my strong suit. All right. Just some key outcomes I really want to cover today. When Eric asked me to speak about the state of fire in Georgia, that really, for me, is, two avenues, right? Prescribed fire and then wildfire. And wildfire, where were we last year and what's our outlook for this year? So, those are some of the key points that I really want to cover. But before I get there, I really want to make sure everybody in this room knows that we shifted a little bit last January, kind of brought everybody back together underneath some regions. And all these numbers, everything I'm about to talk about, would not be possible without these regional leadership managers and their teams. There's a few names up here, and I think we have 3 of them in the room. And I'm going to pick on these guys for just a second and get them to stand up to make sure you know them. So Region 3, Jason Gillis. Jason, I've seen you over here. So Jason is responsible for all things forestry, fire related in Region 3. Region 4, Gabe Outlaw. Thank you, Gabe. Same goes for Gabe, just an outstanding forester and a wealth of knowledge. And in Region 5, Blair is back here in the back of the room. So Blair is, and we're going to touch on this a little bit, but Blair actually leads our incident management team and just led a group of men and women out to the state of Washington. So Blair has a wealth of experience with forestry, but especially wildfire. And those of y'all in that region know that that's a really important role. Also, as far as leadership goes in the state, I lost him. Bo Chesser. Bo is our associate chief. There he is back here in the corner as well. So those of y'all that don't know Bo, Bo's like a walking encyclopedia. If it was ever out there, facts, figures, anything, he's going to remember it. So prescribed fire efforts last year. Really want to take a second to, more than anything, kind of brag on our people and look at GFC internally focused first, and then we'll talk about statewide. We challenged our folks last year to do 20% more and didn't really put boundaries on it. Just what would it look like if we did 20% more? And I'm not going to read, all this stuff up here, but the most important thing up here is that when you look at it, to me, is we had a 35% increase in production over our 5-year average last year. And folks in this room know that we had some wet weather, just it wasn't exactly I'll say a banner year for weather for burning, but both in GFC and statewide, I mean, we really rose up this year in this state and did a lot of good things. To put that in perspective, the silviculture line is what I'd like you to focus on. Almost 300,000 acres more than last year of silvicultural burning. I mean, that says something. That's really getting after it. And that starts with the people in this room, and can't thank you enough. 1.5 million acres, and Ken Parker may touch on some of this, but I want to say Ken was at our 6th highest year in the last 30 years. So really just a lot of hard work by a lot of good people. Yep. So moving forward, prescribed fire training, 6 sessions last year, 238 individuals. And we have plans to continue to put on more classes. You can see there some in Waycross, and then some coming up for the Savannah River and Southwest Georgia PBA in December. One note that's not on here is we are working right now to shift through all of our certified burn practitioners and just see who is still active and who is not. So if you get a phone call just asking you some questions, that's what it is. I mean, folks that are retired and they're not doing it anymore and they haven't been active for 10 plus years, we're going to start shifting them out of the numbers. That's not saying you're losing your certification or anything else, but when we're talking about active prescribed burners, we're really trying to capture those numbers a little bit better. The other thing we did this past year was open up a reciprocity program for surrounding states. So 34 burners now that we have honored their state certification. So Florida, Texas, Alabama, if they're already a prescribed burn manager and they know what they're doing with their fire, they know how to manage their weather and everything else, then we're welcoming in. And really it's just looking for ways, just increase capacity is what it comes down to. Other ways we're looking to increase capacity, I'm sure many in this room probably know RT Lumpkin, but this past year we did some pilot program with our drone where we're actually burning on private lands. And it was at no charge to the landowner for the drone usage or the dragon eggs or the balls, whatever you want to call them. But really just how can we increase capacity, and also how can we manage our smoke better? And I know we're going to hear that more and more today about smoke management and, how do we manage it better? How do we not let it settle on the roads, impact homes, communities, and everything else? And I can tell you the commission is going to lean hard into aerial ignition with drones. If we can burn more acres, in a controlled environment, get the smoke up and out, and we're finished by 2 o'clock and let it clear so it doesn't settle in the communities, that's going to be a really important factor. Apologize about this slide. I will be the first to admit this is a terrible slide, but I didn't know how else to put all this information up there. So when we talk about smoke management, I know we're going to hear a lot today from Ken, Jim Boylan, but there's a lot going on with the NACs. And I don't want to steal any of their thunder, but what you need to know is Georgia's really working hard for you. So there's a team of dedicated Georgia folks, a very small team, and they're looking at how do we work within the new realms of the PM 2.5, and how do we expedite the process of the exceptional events rule. I feel pretty certain Jim's going to get into that, so I haven't had a chance to speak with him yet, but prescribed fire is listed as an exceptional event. It has been acknowledged by EPA. It is a natural occurring thing. It's going to happen, right? So it can be listed as an exceptional event just like a wildfire, but that process is cumbersome, very cumbersome. And so how do we streamline that? How do we, not have to take congressional action? How do we play within the rules and create templates and streamline that? And for those that don't know, Georgia, for some reason, kind of sits in a little bowl. So when all the other states are burning, we tend to get their smoke. So it's really important for us, but I also think it's important for us to lead the way and set the example for other states on what to do and how to do it, and just where we can keep that bar here and keep Georgia #1. So moving into wildfire suppression forecast, I mentioned earlier that Blair led a team. There was many in this room with the commission that actually went out with that team. This is the first time, I believe, since '07, we had a team head out west, go past Texas, and they went to the state of Washington and got to manage a fire on some state and Rainier property in Washington. Relatively smaller fire, but very complex when you talk about terrain, communities, homes, managing the expectations out there and everything else. And I'm very proud to say that they did so well and just that good Southern hospitality that the state of Washington actually wants to do a state-to-state agreement with us so that when they need help, we don't have to jump through hoops and go through the feds or anything else. And we could just send our boys and girls out there to go help them when they need it, and vice versa. So when we need help, there's another state that's, maybe not neighboring, but that we can bring them in very quickly. Really for 24, kind of a slow year. Our peak activity was really in that northwest corner, Dade, Walker County, in those areas. You can see our 5-year average is a little over 5 acres. Usually we average kind of somewhere right around there, but the last 7 or 8 years have been relatively slow. And I don't want to be Chicken Little or anything else like that, but I tend to know how things go and weather patterns and stuff like that. And the fact Tim was here for 3 to 4 years without some peak wildfire activity means we're about time now to hand the baton off. So, and really the weather patterns are kind of setting up that way. before we get a little bit more into the forecast, and this was a look at some of the dozer work going on by that team out west. Last year in 24, 320 of our folks deployed out of state to help. You see that 13 different states. I mean, we went everywhere from, I think, the Upper Peninsula of Michigan to Alaska, California, and really there was a lot of activity in the Southeast with Louisiana and Mississippi, some of the other states. This year to date so far, 134 personnel had deployed. The Southeast seems to be a little bit cooler for the spring, for this fall, I'm sorry, but I really think that our coming spring is going to get a little bit more active. And here's why. So when we start looking at our drought monitors, right now we are wet in South Georgia. It's really kind of a tale of two different states. The middle one, it's kind of hard to tell, but you get the gist of it. Those are our river stages where we are. And then the one on your right, the energy release component, that's how volatile, how intense your fire is going to be. So we start looking at our drought outlook, and this is through November. And you see, it doesn't say we're going into too much drought through November. And the fire potential correlates with that. However, notice it kind of stops right there on that, especially in our northwest corner. It stops on that Alabama line up into Tennessee and everything else. Well, I don't believe that fire is going to miss us in that corner again. I just, or like this predicts. We're really setting up for a very early leaf fall and for really just some peak wildfire in our mountains this fall. Once again, precipitation outlook, when we look through November, dry in that northwest corner in the mountains, wet towards the bottom, but there's a weather event that's happening kind of late October, November, or it's forecast to happen, I should say. And I'm sure a lot of y'all, and then that's what you start getting when we start shifting through January, February, and March. And I bring this up to this room to say, if you have burning to do and you have good weather, do not wait. Get it accomplished early. This year is really setting up to be a very dry spring. Drying that swamp, drying that southeast corner. Blair, who I just pointed out back there, and his leadership team and all of his personnel down there, they could be really busy. And we all know when that happens, and it's a statewide effort, and more than a statewide effort, it could be a national effort. So, like I said, I don't want to be chicken little, but I mean, this is what the information tells us. This is what the data tells us. So we're going to continue to monitor it and continue to pay attention. But please get your burning done early. If we're drying out in February and March, when the wind starts switching and things start happening, and you're asking to burn and we're running fire, we got to place the priority on firefighter safety, on the public safety. Maria, will you go to the next slide, please? I think the last slide I had was just questions. But like I said, really honored to be here. You're going to hear a lot of good information today, especially around smoke and smoke management. I mean, that is the hot topic, right? Escape prescribed fire used to be the hot topic that we were all worried about. And a lot of folks in this room have proven that we are professionals and we can manage our fire. And sure, if we burn enough, sometimes things are going to happen. Meteorologists aren't perfect. We may have bad information, things happen, but that's fine. We work together to overcome that. But the new challenge ahead of us is really the smoke management. So how do we overcome that? How do we do better to protect our practice and keep prescribed fire at the forefront? With the amount of people moving into the state daily, the jobs created, things happening, not everybody's from the Southeast. Not everybody understands prescribed fire. So how do we educate folks? I can tell you that's going to be a big push from the commission is education, is getting into these city centers where they're not going to use prescribed fire, but they do have a voice, and make sure they understand how important it is and what it means not only to them, but what it means to us, our ecosystem, and just really kind of our way of life. So with that, I will stop. I'm happy to take any questions if anybody has some. And if not, like I said, I will be around today. All right. Thank you.